Migro, 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 migro. I am working on my opera voice here, bro.
I mean, it's not terrible.
Oh, good. All right. What's up, guys? Shining the light. We are back. Andrew Tilton here with my good friend.
Oh, I gotta say my name? Yeah,
Yep,
no,
yep.
I'm Rowe. It's good to be here. It's great to be here.
It was a good day.
I'm not gonna start singing. I want to manage expectations at the outset.
That's okay.
I'm not singing.
I just felt Italian. Probably gonna have some pizza, a little cannoli tonight.
Oh, it's a carb day? Is it a carb day?
I should probably alternate carbs days. I just kind of eat what I want. That's kind of a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really.
Same.
Even though I'm a CrossFitter, should care about that stuff. I don't really care about it. I'm like, God's creation. Let's enjoy it. Let's have a good cannoli, some good pizza. Call it good.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing wrong with that.
But welcome to our second episode of the season. First up with content. Rowe, you usually have an icebreaker for us. What kind of icebreaker you got today?
Yeah, so it's just two of us now. But
Today,
yeah. But if you could have any guest on the podcast, who would it be?
Can it be multiple guests or just one guest?
So let's go one guest that's alive today, one guest that's not alive, but we're not doing characters from the Bible because that's an easy answer.
Okay, there's two options here,
okay.
right? And one just pops in my head. The first one was going to be Rich Froning, CrossFit athlete who loves Jesus. I think he'd have some great discussions. Okay. He'd talk about CrossFit, so I'd really enjoy that. Second option might offend some people, might not, but Donald Trump.
He would be, that would be good for ratings.
The real reason is because I do not know where he's at with Christ.
Yeah.
And I would just love to have a conversation about that. And just see what his views are, where his heart's at, and get to know him on that level, rather than politics and all these different things you think and hear about him. Like, let's get to know him on a Christian level and see where he's at with that, and maybe share the gospel with him if he doesn't know Christ.
That's a good answer. That's a really good answer. I would say Drew Brees. He quarterbacked the New Orleans Saints, brought us our Super Bowl, kept the franchise in New Orleans. We almost lost the Saints, but if Drew Brees did not show up and win us the Super Bowl, we probably would have lost the Saints. But he's also a believer, so I would love to have him. I love to talk about faith and football, and his view of Christ and what Christ has done in his life, but also how did that impact your NFL career when you were hurt and you almost had to end your career at 26? How did you lean on Jesus in that season? I would love to kind of dig into that a little bit. From history, probably C.S. Lewis. That's an easy answer.
I thought you said it had to be alive. Didn't you just give that?
But I said one from alive, one alive, one that's from history.
I didn't know that, man.
But then history doesn't include the biblical characters because that would be an easy answer.
I guess Donald Trump is history now.
But he's still alive.
I'm just kidding.
He's still relevant, but yeah.
What I loved about that is you said the New Orleans Saints, and you were like, we almost lost the Saints. Look how you took ownership of that. I think that's okay. When you're your favorite team, or it's your, you're like, oh yeah, my soccer team, we lost the other day. It was such a bummer. But now, you take ownership.
I think if you're a fan, you have to take. People always make fun of the guy who says we. When talking about a professional sports team, because I've never been in the locker room, I'm not on the team, but I think there is a sense of ownership and community there just because they represent my home state and because I've loved them since I was a kid and because they brought the state together, in hard times post-Katrina. So I definitely think there is a level of ownership there.
What would it be like if the church did that? We had ownership from every individual who's we did this together, we corporately, instead of my church, or I go to church on Sundays at X, Y, and Z place and do this, but it's a we corporate thing all the time.
That's a good point. One of my favorite quotes is, "You don't go to church, you are the church." Mm-hmm. If you're a Christian, you are the church. Church is spelled with a capital C, meaning it is the body of all believers that has ever existed and will ever live and are currently alive today. That is the church.
Yeah, we are a body together. Yeah. Right? I just did a really fun study in Ephesians 2, kind of a side note here, but looking at Jews and Gentiles, right? Yeah. And the drastic difference there, but how in Christ we have been really, grafted together, brought together as one new body, one corporate body, the Christian believer, right? And have drastic worldview differences, but Christ tore down those differences, reconciled them together, and said, hey, you're built on my foundation. You're built in me, not anything else, into one new body of temple for the Holy Spirit of God. I
was listening to a sermon kind of on that note, and it was talking about what the gospel, it was a lot of statistics, and I'm not going to bore you with the statistics, but it was saying there is no geographical center of Christianity. In Islam, it's the Middle East. In Hinduism, it's India. Buddhism, it's East Asia. There is no geographical center of Christianity because it's spread so far all around the world that no one region of the world can claim to be the center of Christianity. Obviously, the Vatican historically, but in terms of where Christians are, we're all over the place. Every tribe, tongue, and nation.
Yep.
People from Amazonian tribes to China. By the way, Christianity is on pace to be the biggest religion in China by 2050, just because there's so many people coming to Christ in China, and that's only something that a living God could do, right?
Yeah, we do have center spots for Christianity. It's grown from, it used to be in the Mediterranean where it started. That was the center spot. Then moved up to migrate to the West and Europe, right? Yeah. We go there. And then we had America being the center of Christianity in the world, not sending out tons of missionaries. Then it's moved to Africa, where I would say is there's the majority of Christians right now are in Africa. Yeah. And now the rising population inside of China and Asia is going to be the next center of that, even though it reaches on a global scale.
But the crazy thing is, you look at that and the conclusion is that the gospel is doing exactly what Jesus said it was going to do. You know?
Yep.
And it's only something that a living God could do.
All the nations.
And that kind of segues us into what we're talking about, which is why Jesus? Why have you and I not only said, we love Jesus and we believe in Jesus, but why have you and I pledged our lives to this guy who walked around 2,000 years ago?
I got asked this question. I was getting my hair cut. New barber.
Okay.
About a month and a half ago or so, whatnot. And we just having a good conversation. It was a female barber. She grew up Catholic, and she was asking so why Jesus? Why Christianity in that sense? Mm-hmm. Which is actually really good. So I got to explain to her and walk through that like we're about to do. And I'm sure some of you are kind of like her, wrestling with that question. Like, why would you follow this man? Or why would you have this faith when there's so many things you can do with your life and so many things out there inside of that? And I think you have a similar story where it's like, I grew up in the church, right? In the church, right? I get to go to church multiple times a week. But at some point, you have to make Jesus a personal relationship. You have to make your faith your own inside of that.
Yeah. And kind of my story is, like you said, it's similar to hers. Grew up in the church, did everything the right way, quote unquote, if there is.
Did you grow up in the Catholic Church?
I did grow up in the Catholic Church. But, I have two amazing parents who are both Christians. They sent us to Sunday school. They sent us to Christian summer camp, sent us to Christian school. Knew all the stories, or all the major stories, but didn't actually get to a point where I was making decisions based on what God wanted me to do until I was about 20 years old, so halfway through college.
Yeah.
And what changed is it's not like there was this amazing dramatic moment where, the sky opened up or
You saw angels going to heaven and back, and God spoke to audible voice, and you were like, "Yes, Father."
It wasn't.
That didn't happen?
It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't anything. It just kind of, there was a heart change, and the Bible uses the phrase that he dropped the scales from Paul's eyes, or from Saul's eyes, as in like he was blind, and then God just made things clear. I guess that was the only way to do it. It's not like I really had no choice in the matter. God just revealed himself to me in a way that was so irresistible that I really didn't have a choice but to follow him, just because he was so incredible, and there was such an amazing, relationship or amazing potential for a relationship there, just because of what Jesus did for me, that I just started following him. And there, sky didn't open up, but it just kind of happened,
Was there anything in your life going on at that point that was created tension or was difficult, or was there something where you said, man, I've been doing X, Y, and Z, or this, and this, and it's not enough?
Yeah, it kind of feels ridiculous to say, but I played baseball at a small college.
Baseball.
Yeah, I bring it up all the time.
Should bought some big league chew.
But the reason I bring it up all the time is because it's such a big part of my story. That's just kind of how the Lord revealed himself to me, was through this child's game. But, played baseball at this tiny college, and I wasn't having a good career on the field. And that at my 20-year-old life, that was the most important thing, was having a good career on the field. And when that wasn't happening, it's almost like the Lord was getting my attention and saying, we've tried this your way. Baseball was your God. Getting the attention, the approval of others and the attention of others, that was your God. And you feel empty, and it hasn't gotten you anywhere. So we've done this your way. Let's try it my way. And it's kind of, I got to the end of myself, and the Lord just revealed himself to me in that way.
You said, this didn't work out.
Yeah.
Man, I think I need God.
Yeah.
And then you found it, and you're like, actually, I do know I need him.
And the guy who discipled me in college, he had kind of came to the same conclusion, but the opposite way. So he had a really good career. Like, he was breaking records, he was winning awards, he went pro, and the Lord basically got to him and said, look, this is everything you've ever wanted, and now you realize it's not enough. And that's how the Lord got a hold of him. And it's amazing how God used baseball in two different ways to bring, two different guys closer to him.
Yeah, baseball is a very poor God. At best. At best, it's a very poor God in that sense, because it's going to let you down over and over again. I say that line for CrossFit. I was like, at best, right, as I do CrossFit, like, CrossFit is a very poor God, because so many people make a sport their religion or their life inside of that. And people are like, religion, that's not a religion. What you do on a daily or weekly basis that helps to define who you are, if you do something religiously over and over again, that's your religion, right? That's kind of your faith in which you put your trust inside of there.
Yeah.
And as we look at, we live in a culture we live in the United States, and in a very prosperous culture. And in Dallas, where it is very much the corporate ladder or the go. I would say weeknights it's happy hour, weekends is brunch, and going out to the parties on Saturday nights for people our age, right? Different ages, different things in that sense. And it's like, okay, is there more to life than this, right? And so like, for those of you who are listening, think about it, like, is there more to life than this? And then asking, what is my God? Or who's my God, right? I think like United States, think about our holidays coming up, the next holiday coming up, it's into April. We're coming up on Memorial Day, right? What do people do on Memorial Day? We are going to
go to the lake.
Yeah, go to the lake.
Go to the lake.
And you're gonna eat a lot of food and drink a lot of beer, right? At the same time, you're probably going to see ads that come out for things you need to have, whether it's that new car, new appliances if you have a house, or that new gadget, and they're gonna be on sale. Oh, I gotta go buy this, right? And you think July 4th. What happens July 4th?
We love America. We go to the lake. We go to the lake. We buy a bunch of food. We eat a bunch of food. Drink a bunch of beer.
And more sales.
Yeah.
Right. And you do that same thing for coming up next holiday after that, which is Labor Day. Then you have Halloween. Buy a bunch of stuff. Right. Again, party. Thanksgiving. Buy a bunch of stuff. Eat a bunch of stuff. Sales the next day. And you see this culture that's risen up in America, and it's really a consumer culture that's about eating and drinking / buying things, materialism inside of that.
Yeah.
So that is how we fill ourselves up a lot of time in this society. Now every society has there's slightly different religious things, there's slightly different faith, whatever may be in there going on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the amazing thing about Christianity is, growing up, one of the things that prevented me from going all in with Jesus was the idea that, okay, no more spring breaks, no more fun times. I'm gonna have to go to bed at 7:45 every night. Life is just going to be miserable if I submit to Christ. And that's not what happens. I mean, 1 Corinthians says, whether you eat or drink, do it for the glory of God. Romans 12:1, therefore I appeal to you, brothers, by the mercies of God, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. This is your true and proper worship. And, those are basically saying that we don't have to live the life of a monk following Jesus.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Like, we can enjoy Memorial Day with our friends at the lake, eat some good food, maybe drink a beer, and have fun with our friends, and we can do that to the glory of God by, strengthening relationships with people that God has put in our lives, right? And we can still enjoy the things that God has given us, just in a different way. We're not enjoying them in a sinful way to please our flesh. We're enjoying them in a way that glorifies the Lord. And, he redeems the things that, we thought we were going to lose in a way. He does take some things away, of course, but, we get to allow the world in a much more fulfilling and much more, real way when we submit to Christ.
He puts everything in its proper place.
Yeah.
Right. And the world is his creation. And so we are living in it, and we get to enjoy it and really flourish inside of that.
Yeah.
And I say part of that, like why Jesus for me is recognizing, and this is where, getting there is whatnot, is recognizing that like, I'm going to die one day. You're going to die one day. Actually, we're all going to die one day. And what we typically do within like 2 or 3 generations, if at most, you're going to be forgotten.
Yeah.
Unless you wrote a book, maybe they'll come back with that a little bit in the future or whatnot. But you think about it, like, I don't know I knew my great-grandma, but beyond that, like, I didn't know my great-great-grandma.
Yeah.
I don't even know her name. I can barely remember, I called my great-grandma Ma, right? And now it's like, what has she done? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know much about her, right? My grandma is my grandpa's mom. He remembers her. But beyond that, it's like the generations pass, the generations go, life is a vapor. And so I'm saying, why would I want to live my life for myself, about myself, which actually, when I make everything about me, it just doesn't satisfy ever.
Yeah.
When that's fading, and that I know that I can instead do something that lasts for eternity. In that. And so that's when I made that big switch. Is like, man, I am gonna make my life about you, God, because whatever I do for Him is gonna last for eternity. Inside of that, and really glorify Him, and the fact that we're created to be in relationship with Him, and that is the most satisfying, fulfilling relationship, the only one that can truly meet all of our needs. That's why I want to spend time with Him on a daily basis and be in His courts and be with Him, and then serve Him.
So one of my closest friends, his name is Jordan. He works construction right now, and he actually just got hired by Young Life, so he's going to do ministry.
Sweet.
He's so excited. He's going to get to do ministry with high school kids, and he's so excited. But he doesn't start until July, and so we've just been kind of praying. We were praying so much during that season where he was leading up to getting that job. We were praying that he would get that job, and the Lord definitely came through and let him get that job. And I was like, okay, you got the job you wanted. We're psyched for you. But you've still got 4 months left working for the city doing construction. How are you going to honor God in those 4 months? How are you going to be on mission in those 4 months and share the gospel with your coworkers in those 4 months?
That's a good question.
He's like, I guess I'll just keep doing what I've been doing, which, he's been really faithful in that. And so he just started praying through, Lord, please give me opportunities to share my faith. And 2 days ago, one of his coworkers, who was a younger guy, came up to him and said, Jordan, I don't think I have a purpose in life. Like, what is my purpose? Yeah. And if you're a Christian and someone comes up to you and says, I don't feel like I have a purpose in life, I mean, God has put the ball on the tee, and he's given you a shot. Like, I mean, that's a layup, really. And
all these sports analogies here.
I love the
on
sports
the tee,
analogies.
layup. Yeah. It's like on the 1 yard line.
I do
walk in.
I do mixed metaphors and rambling thoughts. That's my brand. Is those two things.
Cool.
But he says, this kid, he's like, yeah, you know, you feel like you don't have a purpose in life. Let me tell you about a guy named Jesus who changed my life. You know, I used to be addicted to the party scene, you know, drinking, drugs, whatever I wanted to do. And then I met Jesus, and he's completely taken those things out of my life. And he's completely changed me. And he can do the same thing to you if you're willing to receive that grace that he's giving you. And it sounded like it was a longer conversation than that. But, you know, the kid was struggling with purpose. And Jordan just said, hey, here's a God that, you know, he's the only thing you could ever dedicate your life to that would have any significance beyond the grave, really, have any real significance beyond your life. And that's, you know, that's ultimately probably the greatest thing about serving Jesus, is that he gives us a purpose and a hope for a better future. And when I say future, I mean heaven, an eternal life spent with him.
Heaven is for real.
I don't want to be the prosperity gospel guy, that, you know, so I got to clarify that. I don't want people thinking you get a Ferrari when you follow Jesus. So
no. That's what I was thinking about. I recently read, and I had to write a big paper on Ecclesiastes, which is written by Solomon, who was the richest, wisest man who ever lived.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I could say that his wealth was basically $1 trillion. So of over today's money, probably even more based on inflation now. But just tons of gold, you know, 300 wives, just had all the pleasures he could ever ask for. I love the fact that his house took, you know, twice as long to build as a temple of God. You're like, oh, my house took 13 years. God's house took 7. Okay. And that, but he like Ecclesiastes is like, he looks back on life, and it's like kind of when he was a young man, and just like all things he did, and like that didn't work out. Yeah. Right. So these drastic parties, let's try and get as much wisdom as possible. He's like, man, I'm getting much wisdom, but once I die, it goes away.
Yeah.
Right? Who has it? Or he's like, I have all this wealth, but then I have to give it to someone who didn't work for it?
Yeah.
Like what? Right? That's going to happen to each one of us. Yeah. Right? We're going to get all this wisdom, all this knowledge, do all these different things, and it's going to go away, right? When we die. Or we're going to write it down and maybe someone reads it, right? Or we're going to have all this wealth and have to give it to our kids or grandkids who didn't work for it, and they may turn out not how we want them to turn out, right? Yeah. Or who knows, maybe we don't have kids in that. But I love at the end how like summarizes it all. You see this gradual progression, like I should have been with God the entire time. He says, and this version is the NLT on Ecclesiastes 12:13. He says, that's the whole story. Here now is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey his command, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, whether good or bad. I just like that version how it puts it there. That fear God and obey his commands. He simplifies life. He's like, fear God, which means I'm going to respect him and love him and want to be with him and be obedient to him in that sense, right? And that, doing while working underneath the sun and spending, and whatever you're doing, do that, it's going to be okay.
The sad thing is that it took him, you know, $1 trillion of wealth to get to that conclusion.
And this is most likely at the end of his life.
Yeah.
Right? When he has married, tons of his wives are taken away from God. He has altars built to other gods. He needs $1 trillion, and he just has every pleasure ever. And he's saying, that didn't work. And so I would say he's paid the dummy tax kind of a deal. He's like, hey, pay the dummy tax. I wrote you guys a book.
Yeah.
Read it and recognize who God is. And so for a lot of us, we're like, we want to try things. Oh God, but I want to try this with my friends. I want to do this. I want to make the money. I want to climb the corporate ladder. I want to do these sinful things, but they actually ultimately end in ruin. He talks about it in Proverbs.
Yeah, the great thing is, I'll reiterate it. You know, you mentioned climbing the corporate ladder, and we live in Dallas, and that's a big thing that.
I've climbed it today, man. I got 45 floors up here. We're good.
Yeah, luckily, thank God for fast elevators.
For elevators,
but yeah. So, I mean, you know, there's one thing, the difference, kind of, let's use this as an example. So, you know, you climb the corporate ladder. If you're not a Christian, that's where you find your fulfillment. You know, yep. I need to be the CEO of this company one day, and then I'll be satisfied, then I'll be fulfilled. And we know from Solomon that is not true. It doesn't matter how high you get or how much money you make. If you are living apart from Christ, nothing is going to satisfy you long term. But then if you're a Christian and you're that same person and your goal is to be the CEO of that company, now you're not doing that for your own pleasure or for your own, you know, ambition. It's because I'm going to glorify God in the way that I work. Colossians 3:23, work as if you're working for God, not for man. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to glorify God. I'm going to show up early. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do what needs to be done of me. And if I become the CEO one day, so be it. If not, doesn't matter, because I'm serving God, not my boss. And so you can have that same ambition as a Christian. You just have it for a better purpose.
Yep.
You're not serving your own flesh. You're serving the Lord. And I just think that's such an amazing characteristic of God, is that we don't have to live in a monastery for the rest of our lives.
No, we're not called to in that. Man, I was thinking about, so pondering that question, why Jesus? And I'm thinking about how I've been trying to live my life recently, because a lot of us carry a lot of guilt and shame. Mm-hmm. That's the number one thing Jesus wants. He says, I want to give you freedom, and I want to get rid of your guilt and your shame. Yeah. And so I try and live my life. Yes, I sin and I give that back to God. Or I make mistakes, I give that back to him. But everything I've done in the past has been taken away by him in that sense, right? And he covers that. Live that, and then live joyously is my other one. Like, live shame and guilt free and live joyously. Why? Because he covers us with joy. We're reading that about in Proverbs today. Like, he just wants to give us joy because we know where we're going, we know what's going on, and whatever happens, it's in his control, right? The third point that I was thinking about was live devoted to my relationships, right? To my wife, to other people, and to God as well. Not then to God, but God at the same time. And finally, I want to live my entire life in a way that is with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength, as Jesus says, to glorify God in those areas. But I just love the idea. Those first two is like, man, God gives us free of shame, free of guilt, and gives us joy. And so if you might have shame or guilt and you don't know who Christ is, man, come and see. It's just the idea. Just come and see who he can take away, who can make the blind see, the lame walk, and take away sins and shame that we never thought we could get rid of.
Can I add? That's amazing. Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah, of course.
So I had a conversation with a guy not too long ago, and he's really struggling, and it really felt like he didn't believe that the Lord loved him. Like, he believed in God. Yeah. He trusted the scripture, but he's like, I just don't see what God was talking about when he said he loves me. And so we opened up Isaiah 53, which was written several centuries before Jesus was ever born.
Yep.
And it says, he was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering, like one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised and we esteemed him not. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows, yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. And that's amazing because that's prophesying about Jesus several hundred years, and it's talking in past tense. So from Isaiah's perspective, he is looking past Christ and then looking back on what Jesus was going to do. And it's as if God is saying, like, yeah, I'm going to come die for you, but I had this planned out from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I had every detail planned out from the very beginning. So I knew the second that I knitted you together in the womb, I knew that you were going to rebel against me, and that didn't matter because I loved you enough to die for you, and I paid for all of your sins. And I think that's so incredible that, he didn't die for the cleaned up version of Andrew Templeton.
Yeah.
He died for you. And he knew before you were ever born that he was going to die for you. And I just think that level of intentionality and that type of love is something we could never experience outside of Christ.
Yeah. Why Jesus? Because he loves us more than we can love ourselves even. And because he wants to know us more than anyone else. And he cares about you and wants you. And I know that even if you are a believer listening to this, I know that you will go through what we call the dark night of the soul, as theologians have called it, where you're like, is God there? Is God feeling this through grief, through different emotions, ups and downs? And he is there. And he does care about you. And he does love you. And I just want to get that reminder to people.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you have any more questions on why Jesus or things related to that, hit some comments. Hit like, share us, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you're using there, and put us on the IG.
Love that. Have a great day.
Yeah. Hasta pronto.